This is Swami. We'll discuss about the fundamental of AWS. This is a series one. So there is a few more series that will come along with this, and we are going to discuss about complete AWS. So in the fundamentals, so first we'll go for the learning objectives. That's we are going to learn. So what is the first one that we are going to learn is understanding the compute services available in AWS and how to launch an EC2 instance. So the first thing that we are going to learn in AWS is, so there is a compute. Compute is one of the biggest element in AWS infrastructure. The compute can be used for the different prospect, and as well as what is the advantage of the using of EC2 that we are going to discuss about on this fundamental session. So the next one is learning about auto scaling and load balancing in AWS. So the next thing is let's assume that one day you hit that a number of hits, and those are unexpected, and due to that the servers got crashed. So to overcome this situation, where we are enabling the auto scaling, and we will give you certain criteria for this auto scaling. So when this criteria is met, so automatically the instances will get added, and once the load is completed, the instances will be destroyed from the pool. Next, so we will discuss about the storage offered by the AWS and what and all the storages that we have right now in AWS. And we'll also discuss about the Amazon S3 and as well as Elastic Block Storage, EBS. And later, the fourth one that we are going to learn about the networking in AWS and Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, how to set up a virtual private cloud and how to create an subnets and what is the port IP address range that you can give and how to distinguish between the uh, uh, private and public subnets. So all these topics that we are going to cover in this session. Next, uh, so next one is okay, so the last one is the database. So what and all databases are available, how these databases can be useful for the application, and what type of database can be used and what type of application. All these things will be discussed on this session. So the last but not least is identity and access management can be used to handle security in AWS cloud environment. So to create, so after creating EC2 and load balancing and S3 bucket and creating network, so connecting application to database, once you've done all these things, the main factor is that, okay, who is authorized person to allow this and do activities, any one of these structure. That person that we need to define and provide the access in identity and access management, where we are going to create a multiple groups, and we are after creating a multiple groups, then we'll define, okay, what is the group and what is the use of the each group, and if we define uh, what are the parameters that you need to consider while you're defining that identity access management, those things that we will discuss about this. Next, like generally, what are the questions that everyone in the space is, what is AWS service? So Amazon Web Services is a secured and cloud platform that offers database storage and content delivery and compute power to personal and business users. Having seen exponential growth in the sector, AWS allows users to build sophisticated applications at a scalable through leveraging AWS cloud products and solutions. Okay, so what generally AWS does is AWS is providing a storage, so and content delivery, and as well as like okay servers and load balancing. So all these things in AWS, where you can use these services, and user can build a application. That application can be used, or or can be scalable through leveraging AWS cloud products and solutions. So there is so many products in AWS that we will go and discuss about those. How does the AWS cloud work? Okay, simply that. Okay, so the AWS has complete uh, collection of cloud computing services, and as well as so what it does, it just give a rent their services. You just need to use those services and pay for what you use for it. That's it. And what are the different types of cloud computings are available? So there is mostly like okay three types of cloud computing are available. One is the software as a services, next one is a platform as a service, and the third one is infrastructure as a service. So if you prioritized, then software as a services followed by the platform and infrastructure. So next one, like okay, so what are the examples of PaaS, SaaS, and LaaS? So most business use a combinations of SaaS, software as a service, and infrastructure as a service, and cloud computing service models. Okay, and many engaged in developer to create applications using a PaaS too. So example like okay SaaS examples are BigCommerce and Google Apps, Salesforce, Dropbox, Mailchimp, Gendeck, DocuSign, Slack, and so etc. Those are all used for SaaS. Next PaaS examples are the AWS Elastic Beanstalk, so that we'll learn for the coming sessions, and the Heroku and Windows Azure and Force.com, OpenShift, and etc. Those are all used for PaaS examples, like okay, like platform as a service. The next one is like infrastructure as a service, and again AWS, EC2, and Rackspace, and Google Compute Engine, and DigitalOcean, so etc. All these are used for infrastructure as a service. Okay, so differentiation between that. So all this, how we can differentiate? Okay, on-prem is the one where you managing everything, the application or data, runtime or middleware. Okay, uh, OS, virtualization, server, and storage and networking. Whereas in infrastructure, IaaS, what you do is like you manage application and data, runtime and middleware and OS. And the platform as a service, what you manage application and data. So software as a services, just you need to use it and like okay, just deploy your application, build a code and deploy the applications, run it. And so the main question, okay, AWS is a SaaS or a PaaS or PaaS? So AWS is a comprehensive and evolving cloud computing platform provided by Amazon that includes a mixture of infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and packed software as a service and offering. So that means, so AWS is a combination of SaaS, PaaS, AS. So infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and software as services. These three combinations. So all these, there is three combinations that you use in AWS Amazon Web Services. So that I just want to discuss about that general architecture. So how we have a general architecture in any organizations, and where is the good fit, like, okay, so why, so most of the people who, okay, who are watching are like just going through this video. So okay, some of you are like, okay, so why you need choose an AWS, okay, what is that AWS is going to provide, okay, how the architecture will be, so what is, where is the AWS is playing the critical role. So that, okay, this is the complete architecture, general architecture for any applications. When you are getting a response, like, okay, suppose let's assume that, okay, you've gone through that, okay, any one of the domain, okay, so www.dms Amazon messaging service, or okay, so anything, okay, anything that you can say as a domain name. So what it does, like, first it will go and connect to the DNS, domain name server. In a domain name server, so if you are host that, okay, your application into the same where you bought this your domain name, then no need to specify or no need to make any changes. Suppose your DNS is hosted, you bought the DNS in some other third party vendor like GoDaddy or some other any website, Google Cloud or anywhere, and you are hosting your application in AWS network, then you have to make the changes in the settings of Google GoDaddy. So you have to provide a DNS service details, and you have to edit the DNS service details and everything in order to make a communication between the GoDaddy and AWS. So that's one thing that, okay, it will connect to the DNS. Once it is connecting to DNS, so where it will enter into the your, okay, let's assume that this complete network is the AWS network. Generally, how the application flow it works is, it will talk to the load balancer, and the load balancer will have a applications like, okay, backend application service will be configured. So then from the load balancer it can talk to the cluster, so where the applications, your application is running on these three instances. So these three instances we just group it, and we configure this in a load balancer. The moment the request is comes to the load balancer, and it will forward it to any one of this instance. Suppose your application need to talk to the database, then again it will make a communication to database, and it will get the details about it. Let's assume that, let's take an example that, okay, so you just logged into the facebook.com, and where it will ask you to enter the username and password. The moment you enter into the username and passwords, it's connected to the DNS, and it entered the load balancer, and from the load balancer it's went to any one of this instance. Let's assume that, okay, it went to any one of this instance, either it be instances one or two or three. So once the moment it went, so we need to validate that your credentials. So then again it make another call to DB database. Once it's make the call to another call to the database, then it got the response, and the response is forwarded to the again to your browser. Once the moment it forwarded to the your browser, the next thing it does is like, okay, so you were able to log into the site, Facebook site. So okay, you log into the Facebook site, and after you log into the Facebook site, what you did is you just like, okay, uploaded one image, right? That image, where it will go and store, the image will go into storage. So the storage is attached to the this VMs, and and when on then the moment like you store that, okay, image, then it store that into the storage device. Whenever you want to retrieve, so you can able to retrieve that the image, right? Next thing, so we'll go now in depth, okay, so where we'll use this arc, like, okay, we'll compare this with the AWS services that AWS is going to provide. Okay, from DNS, okay, it's to connect to the AWS network, the first thing that you need is a Route 53. So AWS having the one device called a Route 53, and the Route 53 where you have to define like, okay, your domain name, and as well as like, okay, after you define the domain name, what it does is like, okay, it'll just give you then DNS instances, that DNS instances that you need to go and configure in DNS server, that is a GoDaddy server. So once you configure, the communication between these two is established, and this is like, okay, Route 53. Okay. Once you are done with Route 53, then next thing is load balancer. What you do in the load balancer is like, okay, before you creating a load balancer, first you need to know that, okay, what and all instances that you need to group together in a load balancer. For that, okay, what you are going to create, you are going to create in instances. What kind of instances that you are going to create? Let's assume that you are going to create an EC2 instances. Okay, EC2 instances, like, okay, so where like you will create a servers with a certain configuration that you select, okay, and certain configuration in the sense like, okay, you need a resources, right? So you need in resources, that resources that you will use uh, to operate your application and to provide a runtime environment for your application. What is the runtime environment? Runtime environment in the sense, uh, so to respond dynamically to your request is called a runtime, like that will do in that will happens in your applications. Okay, to do that, okay, you might that might be like uploading an image, or like retrieving an image, or or chatting with someone, or anything, that is all these are dynamically happening. That's all, everything is happens in application side. To make that like, okay, you need a resources that occupies that resources, the objects will be stored into that resource, and it will make a communication to different services. The resources are CPU and memory. Those are the CPU and memory. So EC2 means Elastic Compute Cloud. So the Elastic Compute Cloud used, so not so let's assume that, okay, you created an EC2 instances. So you deployed the same kind of like, okay, you created a 3 EC2 instances, and you deployed like, okay, same application in 3 of the instances. Because the reason is, okay, if one get failed, okay, the traffic will be routed to the another instance. So suppose if the second is gets failed, okay, then again it will go to the third. So that's the reason, okay, you created a same application in a multiple instances. Then, so once you created that, okay, so how the request will come? So the request need to be come to that, okay, instance by instances simultaneously or the parallelly, right? Okay, those things that like the load balancer will take care. So load balancer is one of the topic, again one of the component in AWS, where you will configure that load balancer for any one of the instances, and you will group together, and it will provide in one URL. That URL, it will talk to that, okay, the entry is coming from the outside world, right? So once, yeah, that is for like, okay, on the compute side. Next one, so to store the images and everything, retrieve the images, so you have a storage, you need a storage, right? That storage is like, okay, as either S3 or ESB or anything that like, okay, so that you will use as a storage. That's also one of the component and one of the subject. Next one is, so to storage user data or like session information, anything related to that, like the user data is going to store it in the database. So either it be RDBMs or like, okay, Amazon DB or anything, any kind of the DB, that's you need to use. Okay, that's also another topic in AWS. So to provide like the flexibility of that, okay, so you need to restrict and like you need to implement the policies for your applications on a different point. So and where you utilize that, okay, all these components together at one single point of place. So that's called like so that is where the AWS is happening. The AWS is a combination of any, like the compute or networking, storage, you name it. Like, okay, so all the services that you will provide, all you have to do is like, okay, you should be knowing that, okay, so how to configure the route 53 or load balancer, how you create instances, EC2 instances, and how you map the storage to the EC2 instances, how you detach, and as well how you connect to the DB, and everything that you will see in the AWS. Apart from this, the advanced topics sites, right? So to monitor this, okay, so this complete of the network, and how many instances to using, okay, what is the instance resource utilizations and everything, that you will go for the, okay, Amazon CloudWatch. So it's a combinations of multiple parts, so where you will be learning on these sessions, okay, so you will be we will be defining okay, so multiple uh, ways to, and multiple components we are going to discuss on these sessions. So this is like, okay, just like introduction. I just want to see that, okay, what is like AWS, okay, how many compute cloud computings are available in market, okay, what is the advantage of each of them. So going forward, like, okay, we'll start with the EC2, and after that, like, so we'll go by one subject, and we'll have, so I will discuss in depth on each and every topic. So if you have any questions, please put in a comment or send a mail. Okay, we'll respond as early as possible. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share. Thank you.